Hey folks, welcome back to SmartScope-hub. Here we're diving into Trump's unbelievable comeback. Trust me, you won't want to miss this one. Let's jump right in. 2024 election was more shocking than a plot twist no one saw coming. Trump's comeback? Think blockbuster sequel vibes. But this time he did what few predicted, winning the popular vote. That's right, folks. The man who once lived in reality TV glory now has political critics eating their words. Confetti rained down, Washington, D.C. shook, and if elections were movies, this one was a triple feature. We're talking the Revenant levels of unexpected survival, except instead of fighting a bear, it was fighting off accusations of inciting an insurrection. We're diving deep into the political wreckage to figure out just how this happened. Was it the economy? Was it demographics? Was it just that everyone was really tired of hearing about Hunter Biden's laptop? Let's find out. Here you go. Okay, let's set the scene. America 2024. The political landscape looks like a Michael Bay film set after a particularly enthusiastic explosion. And standing triumphantly amidst the rubble, like a slightly more orange Statue of Liberty, is Donald J. Trump. Yes, you heard that right. The man who once tweeted "Coffee" is back in the Oval Office. And he didn't just eke out a win, he expanded his coalition and won full control in Washington. The House, red. The Senate, also red. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris, the woman who was supposed to be the future of the Democratic Party, felt more like an unfortunate side character in a rerun of Biden's economic series. Trump sold better days like they were deep-fried Oreos at a state fair and people lined up for miles. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, wasn't the economy actually doing kind of okay under Biden? And you'd be right. Unemployment rates were down, wages were up, and on the surface it seemed like things were heading in the right direction. On paper, things were looking pretty rosy, with economic indicators suggesting a period of growth and stability. But here's the thing about economic indicators. They don't really mean much when you're still forking over half your paycheck for a carton of eggs and a gallon of gas. The reality on the ground was starkly different. Despite the positive numbers, Americans couldn't shake off the sting of post-pandemic prices. The cost of living was skyrocketing, and it felt like there was no end in sight. High housing costs and expensive borrowing from the Fed's interest rate spikes kept frustration bubbling like a pot of instant ramen that's been on the stove a little too long. The dream of home ownership was slipping away for many. Voters, in their infinite wisdom, and by infinite wisdom, I mean deep-seated frustration with the price of groceries, decided to say Bidenomics, no thanks, and opted for a second helping of Trumponomics instead. The sentiment was clear. Change was needed, and Harris, well, she was stuck trying to sell a message of economic stability to people who were still reeling from years of instability. Her words fell on skeptical ears. With Harris unable to distance herself from Biden, it felt like voters were re-watching old episodes, and they wanted a new plot twist, even if it meant bringing back the villain from the first season. The political landscape was shifting once again. Hold on to your monocles, folks, because this next bit is a real doozy. For the first time in decades, white voters made up a bigger share of the electorate, jumping from 67% to 71%. Yes, you heard that right. It's like a demographic rewind. As if someone hit the rewind button on the American melting pot. And suddenly, we're back to watching Leave It to Beaver. This shift alone gave Trump a huge leg up, despite national trends indicating otherwise. It's like finding out that the reason your favorite band's reunion tour is sold out is because a bunch of people who haven't listened to their music since the 80s decided to buy tickets. Look, I'm not saying that every single one of those white voters cast their ballot for Trump, but let's just say that a significant enough chunk of them did to make a difference. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or should I say the elephant in the voting booth? Latino voters. This demographic has been a hot topic in recent elections, and for good reason. Now, if you'd asked any political pundit worth their salt a few years ago whether a Republican could win a significant portion of the Latino vote, they'd probably laugh you out of the room. The conventional wisdom was that the Latino vote was a stronghold for the Democrats. And yet here we are, living in a world where Trump captured a record-breaking 46% of the Latino vote. This was a seismic shift that caught many by surprise and forced a re-evaluation of political strategies. But here's the twist, folks. It wasn't just one monolithic block of Latino voters who swung for Trump. The Latino community is diverse, with varying opinions and priorities. Latino men, it seems, were particularly enamored with Trump's brand of macho, tell-it-like-it-is politics, backing him by a double-digit margin. This group found his straightforward approach and promises appealing. Latina women, on the other hand, were less than impressed, with the majority casting their votes for Harris. Their concerns and priorities often differed significantly from their male counterparts. It's a political gender gap salsa, and it seems like Trump managed to find the perfect rhythm to win over a significant portion of the dancers. This dynamic added a fascinating layer to the election results. Whatever the reason, it's clear that the GOP has found a winning formula with at least a portion of the Latino electorate. And that's something that should have Democrats sweating more than a bottle of Valentina hot sauce left out in the sun. The future of this voting bloc will be crucial in upcoming elections. Well, folks, it seems the American electorate decided to take a page out of the GOP's playbook and go for a classic, the all-male leadership team. That's right, from sea to shining sea, men turned out in droves for Trump, creating a sea of red on the electoral map that would make a Republican strategist weep tears of joy. We're talking every age, every income level, every education level, you name it, men voted for Trump. Blue-collar workers in the Rust Belt, Trump. White-collar professionals in the suburbs, Trump. Harris, meanwhile, just couldn't seem to crack the code. Her message of unity and progress seemed to fall flat with men, who opted instead for Trump's promises of strength and a completely fictional golden age. Maybe it was her policies, maybe it was her personality, maybe it was just the fact that she dared to challenge the status quo by, being a woman running for president. Whatever the reason, the result is clear. The Boys Club is alive and well in American politics, and it seems like they've got a new member. All right, ladies and gentlemen, but mostly ladies, let's be real, let's talk about the women. Because while the men were busy forming a conga line behind Trump, the women of America were out here doing what they do best, showing up and making their voices heard. With a record-breaking 53% turnout, women proved once again that they're a force to be reckoned with in American politics. But hold your horses, folks, because this is American politics we're talking about, and nothing is ever that simple. While Harris did win the majority of the female vote, she couldn't quite match the margins that Biden enjoyed back in 2020. And the reason? Well, it seems that Trump's siren song of nostalgia and resentment resonated with a key demographic, rural white women without college degrees. Harris, meanwhile, focused on winning over educated white women, a strategy that, while not entirely unsuccessful, simply couldn't compete with Trump's overwhelming support among his base. Well, folks, it seems like we've stumbled upon a tale as old as time, the political gender divide. You know the one I'm talking about, that chasm of misunderstanding and mistrust that seems to open up whenever a woman dares to aspire to a position of power. Despite her impressive qualifications and undeniable charisma, Harris faced an uphill battle from the start, simply by virtue of being a woman at the top of the ticket. While many women saw in her a beacon of hope, a symbol of progress, and a champion for their rights, a significant portion of the electorate, and yes, I'm looking at you dudes, just couldn't seem to wrap their heads around the idea of a Madam President. Some men, it seemed, viewed Harris with suspicion, questioning her motives and doubting her sincerity. Ticket splitters, the political world's equivalent of that friend who orders a salad and then steals fries off everyone else's plate. They're unpredictable, they're frustrating, and they always seem to know how to get what they want. And in the 2024 election, it seems like they knew exactly which levers to pull to throw everyone for a loop. You see, while the presidential race was a nail-biter, with Trump and Harris neck and neck in many states, the down-ballot races told a slightly different story. Voters, it seemed, were more than happy to split their tickets, voting for a Democrat for Senate and a Republican for president, or vice versa. While Democrats managed to hold their own in many down-ballot races, it wasn't enough to overcome the tidal wave of support for Trump at the top of the ticket. It's like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. Sure, you're making an effort, but it's not going to make much of a difference in the end. Well, folks, it seems like we've got ourselves a case of déjà vu. Remember back in 2016, when all the polls predicted a Hillary Clinton landslide, and then, well, you know the rest? Yeah, it seems like the pollsters haven't quite learned their lesson because they went ahead and underestimated Trump again in 2024. Seriously, how do you miss the mark by that much? We're talking double-digit discrepancies between the polls and the actual results in some states. It's like trying to predict the weather using a magic 8-ball. Sure, you might get lucky every now and then, but most of the time, you're going to end up caught in a downpour without an umbrella. So, what happened? Well, it seems like a lot of voters decided to play their cards close to their chests this time around, waiting until the last minute to make up their minds. And when they did finally cast their ballots, they broke for Trump by a significant margin. Well, folks, the dust has settled, the confetti has been swept away, and the Democrats are left picking up the pieces of what can only be described as a political asterisk show. It's time for some serious soul-searching, and I'm not talking about the kind that involves scented candles and a playlist of Enya songs. This is about deep, introspective reflection. First and foremost, how did they lose the working class? These were their people, their base, the backbone of the Democratic Party for generations. And yet, somewhere along the way, the Democrats lost their way, becoming too focused on identity politics and coastal elites, and forgetting about the struggles of everyday Americans in the heartland. The disconnect grew wider. Trump, meanwhile, swooped in and claimed the mantle of the working-class hero despite being a billionaire who's never worked a blue-collar job in his life. And then there's the issue of rural America. The Democrats have been hemorrhaging rural voters for decades, and the 2024 election was no exception. The trend continued unabated. If the Democrats want to have any hope of winning back the White House in 2028, they need to figure out how to reconnect with rural voters. This means more than just policy changes. They need to show these voters that they understand their concerns, that they share their values, and that they're committed to real change, and that they're fighting for their interests. Only then can they hope to bridge the divide and rebuild trust. 2024 was a whirlwind, a tectonic shift with plenty of political aftershocks. We saw the return of Trump, the rise of ticket splitting, and the fall of traditional polling, but that's it for today. Don't forget to comment with your takeaways, like and subscribe for more political shockers, humour and analysis. Because let's be honest, after the year we've just had, we're all going to need a good laugh.